Welcome to Resolve's Kitchen Table Conversation series. Resolve's Kitchen Table Conversation is a digital series hosted by us at Resolve. It's really bringing back the nostalgia of our founder, Barbara Eck, who founded Resolve around her kitchen table. We are excited to have you here today, and we're proud to carry on Barbara Eck's tradition of sitting around a kitchen table through this series that brings experts and regular folks to the table to share their experiences and hopefully provide some insight on in areas that will help you as you build your family. So our topic today is on male factor infertility and testing, what to expect and kind of when to begin that process. Our head of the table sponsor for this episode is Legacy. So the reason we wanted to bring this conversation together is it brings folks that have a really unique perspective and story. Male factor infertility is not talked about very often. And so today we want to talk about that personal experience. We want to talk about when you should consider getting tested, a little bit about the process, barriers that people face when dealing with male factor, and what it's really like going through this process. So let's just jump right in, get right to our panelists and those of us around this kitchen table. So I'm going to throw out a question that I would love all of you to respond to. And before you respond to your first question, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and letting us know why you're here. In other words, what's your connection, either personal or professional, to this topic. All right, so let's just start with the big one, which is, why is there stigma around male infertility? So I'm gonna jump right to Nathan, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and tell us your thoughts on this whole thing about the stigma around male infertility.
Sure. So yeah, my name is Nathan Silva. I live in Dartmouth, Massachusetts, and I think the stigma, there certainly is a stigma, and I think it's partially because it's not talked about a lot. And for me personally, I was diagnosed with azoospermia in 2014, and when I received that diagnosis, I didn't even know that male factor infertility was a thing. So it was a complete shock to me, and I think it's largely because of it's not spoken about. Whenever at least I thought about infertility, I thought it was always a female problem and nothing I would need to worry about. I was just completely in the dark on it, and I think that's just a lack of conversation regarding it makes it a stigma. Because then when I found out I had it, had an issue, I didn't know who to talk to, or it's almost you don't have a circle to talk about it or to so it's almost by default it becomes a stigma because you just never knew about it, and it's just not talked about a lot. I think that's, for me, that's where it stems from at the beginning.
Jared, please introduce yourself, and would love to hear your thoughts, and if you have a similar experience and thoughts on the stigma around male infertility.
Yes, hi. I'm Jared Wright. I'm from New York City, and I was diagnosed myself with azoospermia around the beginning of the pandemic. And I've also begun a series of stories for Vice alongside my colleague, Zach Smith, one of which I kind of dove into my own personal journey. And part of the reason Zach and I worked on those stories was because, like Nathan said, it wasn't really talked about. And I was trying to look for information and support, somebody to talk to, not just for men, but Black men. And there was literally nothing. And one of the other big reasons I did these stories, that I'm doing these, is because I wanted to see if I could meet another Black man that has gone through this, and I've met a few, and they all said that I was the first Black man that they've ever spoken to that's also dealt with it. So it's just, there's a lot of shame around it. A lot of people don't want to come forward, and that's detrimental to a lot of the help that can also be given, because the fewer people that come forward, the less data there is out there.
Yeah, I mean, it just sort of perpetuates itself. You know, it's if no one's talking about it, how is anyone learning anything? How is anyone understanding it? And it just perpetuates it so much. Stephanie, I'd love to get your thoughts on the stigma piece, because I know you're going to introduce yourself, but you see this probably every day. But I'd also love for you to share, because you have such a unique experience, what you see as the biggest barriers that men face in seeking even a basic fertility workup.
Absolutely. So hi, I'm Stephanie Keller. I am the Senior Manager of Clinical Services for Legacy. I am an andrology certified nurse with 10 years of experience in men's health, male infertility, and urology surgery. So
what is andrology? Stop right there. What is andrology?
So it's the simple explanation, it's hormones for men, male hormones. So that's the most basic way to explain it, but it's specific to male health.
Okay.
And,
so yeah, tell us about these barriers that you think that men face.
Honestly, I couldn't agree more with what the other gentleman said in regards to, yeah, you feel like you're the only one. There's no one to talk to. Men aren't talking about it. I think that there's definitely a lack of conversation. Women are very open and free with discussing their fertility journeys. Men tend to be a lot quieter. They don't know where to go. I think one of the biggest barriers are, you know, the stigmas behind it of, because I have fertility challenges, it can be demasculating, you know, and it's people associate fertility with virility, two different things, you know, very different. I think it's a lack of knowledge, because not enough men are talking about this. Everyone thinks it's only me. People assume fertility issues are a woman's issue, not a man's problem. No man thinks, you know, going into it that, oh, it must be me. And I think that, you know, that can be really difficult. Another barrier is access, frankly. Access to specialists, you know, being able to, there are long waits in many areas to get in to see a urologist if that's what you need to do, or even to get that baseline testing started. So that can be problematic. And then the embarrassment factor too. Any man who has ever had to go and, you know, give a sample at a clinic knows, you know, that awkward room with the couch and the, you know, uncomfortable material that could be in the room, and you're one of many. You're waiting for someone to come out so you can go in. Nobody likes that. And I think, you know, not enough people know there are alternative options. And I see you guys laughing because you know you've been there, as have many before you. Not enough people know, you know, there are at-home testing options as well.
You know, Nathan and Jared, I'm just thinking about the urologist. Women go to, you know, hopefully go to an OBGYN, an obstetrician gynecologist. They're seeing maybe a general practitioner, but for the most part, women are intersecting with the medical field from, you know, teenage all the way up through their 20s and so forth. Had you guys ever been to a urologist prior to your referral and your infertility diagnosis? Just curious if that was a normal doctor that you saw for regular care.
It certainly wasn't normal, but I had been to a urologist maybe 2 times that I can remember. One time.
Okay.
One of which, the most recent before I started going through all this, was when I was in middle school.
Wow. Okay. What about you, Nathan? Not to, you know, delve into your personal private, but here we are. This is what we're talking about.
No, I hadn't. Well, sorry. Yes, I had been to a urologist as a kid, but the last time I had been to one was when I was 8 years old.
Interesting.
And in fact, prior to my diagnosis, I hadn't been to a doctor at all, probably for 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
So
Guys,
yeah,
guys
when I
don't even
went
get
to
physicals, right? You guys don't even get physicals sometimes.
when I went off to college, I stopped going to the doctor and I never went back. I now have
Okay.
a primary care physician that I see every year.
All right. Well, good for you. Good for you. They're in, I'm just going to end right there. My point is well taken. But let me just one more question I want to throw out to all of you. Well, maybe not one more, but so what do you think in your mind is the biggest misconception that surrounds a male factor infertility diagnosis?
Ooh, that's a tough one. There's a few.
Well, you said one, which you talked about virility and masculinity.
Mhm.
But what else? What's
That's
another
one.
misconception?
I think sometimes people don't realize that fertility, is linked to your overall health as well.
Ah,
People don't know that that can be, a possible association. Obviously, male fertility challenges come from many places. It can be lifestyle related. It can be underlying medical condition. It could be something, a medical issue that happened in childhood. There's a lot, there's a lot that people don't understand.
no, I think most people would not think of that, Stephanie. Jared, Nathan?
I think one of the biggest misconceptions that I've seen is that it even exists at all. Like
Mm,
there are there are people that I'm close to who say, "Oh, I don't even think that's true. I don't think you have that."
I saw
Me,
that in your article. Some guy was like arguing with you. He goes, "I'll pay for another test." I was like, "You said it."
meanwhile, I have multiple tests in front of me that all say zero. So I don't know. I don't know where it comes from, and I don't know what people would have to see in order to believe it, believe what's in front of their face. But
Right, right.
that's one of the big things that I've certainly come across.
Nathan, anything strike you?
And I think, otherwise, everything worked. There's just
Got it. Yeah,
nothing in there for me. And so I didn't know that,
yeah,
that there was something wrong. Like
yeah.
you
You
would
would
think
think,
that if there was a
yes,
major problem that would prevent you from having children,
right,
that you would be able to notice that somehow.
right,
But
right,
for me,
right.
that otherwise there was
Yeah,
no way of knowing absent a test that showed zero.
right.
Yeah,
I
the
hear
same
that a
for me.
lot.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like you guys are thinking, where's the symptoms, right? How come I
I
don't
hear
feel
it
any?
every day. I feel fine. Nope, test must be wrong. There must have been a mistake. You must have mixed mine up with somebody else because I
Oh,
feel fine. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm healthy. I
wow,
eat well. I exercise.
wow.
It's one of the most common things I hear, unfortunately.
Well, I'm going to jump in. I have another question, but I'm going to save it to the end because I think it'll be a great one to end on. But I'm going to turn to you, Stephanie, for a couple of quick questions. I know at Legacy, you have an at-home test, but if you can, walk us through the process of what is involved with testing for male infertility.
So there's a lot to it. It can start with a simple semen analysis to begin with, but a semen analysis is not the only piece of testing that you need to have done to determine whether there is male factor infertility. And one semen analysis still isn't enough for an official diagnosis. So especially when it comes to azoospermia, no physician will give you that diagnosis without seeing multiple zeros. They're going to want to see more
Wow.
than one test. So starting with the semen analysis, there's blood work that needs to happen. There's hormone panels that need to be looked at. These are not things that are drawn in normal physical. They're not things that you would have done all the time. So it's something you have to specifically go looking for it. There's a physical exam that comes with this too, because some causes of male factor infertility can be diagnosed just based on physical exam alone.
Wow.
There's going to be a comprehensive medical history, medication review, possible imaging studies as well before they can give you a complete diagnosis.
And that's usually done by a urologist? Is that whole kind of workup and everything?
In most cases, yes. You can start the process. Some primary care doctors will begin it for you. You will get to the point where you need to see a urologist if things are flagging. If you're talking about just I'm curious, I need to have a semen analysis, you can do that yourself via an at-home testing company like Legacy, or through your primary care doctor. Sometimes
Okay.
they will order it initially.
Okay, great. So let's walk through the first appointment. What can a guy expect on their first appointment?
So first appointment, it's going to be a lot of talking. It's a deep delve into your
Okay.
medical history from birth on. So you're going to be answering a lot of questions not a lot of men are even equipped to answer. So it's important
Oh,
to
wow.
talk to your parents if you have access to them prior, because a lot of people don't tell their children, oh, when you were a baby, you might have had a procedure or a problem that was fixed early and never discussed. That happens all the time.
You're kidding. Oh my
All the
gosh.
time. Very common. Yep. Somebody who maybe had an undescended testicle as a child, it was, repaired, in infancy. And so they just didn't ever talk to them about it. Okay, problem solved.
Right.
Happens often. So it's a good thing to know, truly know your background. You're going to be talking about all of that. You'll be talking about, of course, like I said, medications you're taking, other things that have gone on in your life, what you've done in the past and present for medications prescribed and not prescribed. And then you're going to get that physical exam that I talked about before, looking for, some sort of issue either with testicle size that might indicate a problem, or finding something like a varicocele. That's one of the most common causes of male fertility challenges. And then it'll be usually to the blood work. Not all doctors are ordering semen analysis for same day as
Got
that
it.
first visit. Typically, you would either have one already or they're going to have you do it after the fact, but never a bad idea to go prepared to produce a sample if need be, same day, because in some cases they will ask you to do that as well.
So when you go into the testing part, like the semen analysis, when should men consider getting tested? What would be a reason that somebody would get a Legacy home test, and when do you all recommend that men do that?
So there's a lot of reasons people are testing. If you have a known issue, something that may have happened in childhood or in your teen years, that could be accident, illness, injury, a medical condition that you're already aware of, it's always a good idea to have a baseline test just to know where you stand. If you think you might want to start a family, test early. It's great to, knowledge is power. And once you know where you're at, now you have time to address these issues. You don't want to decide to start your family at 40 and then all of a sudden realize, oh no, I have a problem. Now I need to go through procedures and preparations. You can save yourself a lot of time in consulting with a professional early on and taking those steps to make any changes needed or address any medical concerns at that time.
So Nathan and Jared, anything Stephanie say that was your experience, or did either of you have a different experience kind of on your first visit?
Yeah, so my so when we had started trying to build our family in early 2013, and we were unsuccessful, and my wife sort of had a feeling early on that something might have been wrong. So we were pretty young. I think we were in our mid 20s.
Oh my
And the rule of thumb was, try for a year when you're that age, and if nothing happens, then go see someone. So that's what I was thinking. All right, just tick off the months, month by month, and we'll try again next month. So I didn't think anything of it. But my wife, at about 6 months or so, started getting concerned. So she went to go see her doctor, and she got the full workup and found nothing, no issues, no problem. And that's when her doctor recommended that I go get a test.
Oh,
So I
so
put
her
it off.
doctor did. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my wife's doctor made the recommendation, and I didn't think anything of it. We still weren't at a year, no big deal. And I put it off for a few months, and she convinced me just go get tested. So I brought my sample in and tested it, and that's when he called me and told me, hey, you got a problem. You got to go see a doctor. I said, well, I don't have a doctor. Who do I go see? So he recommended a local urologist, who ordered another test and started asking those questions that Stephanie was mentioning. But he wasn't a specialist in male factor infertility. So he didn't really have many good answers for me or good plans or solutions. And so that's when I went to see a male infertility specialist up in Boston, where I got 2 more tests and had the full workup that Stephanie
Wow.
described.
Wow.
And it was a
Yeah.
interesting experience for sure.
Jared, what about that first kind of exposure to the docs and everything? How did it go for you?
My situation really does mirror Nathan's, so I'm wary of just sort of repeating everything that he said.
I'm gonna ask you first next time.
No, because it's just so parallel. They said, like Nathan said, they try for a year. My wife was not waiting the whole year. She's, my wife knew something was wrong sort of immediately. So, or something, not necessarily wrong, but something was certainly askew. So she said, you have to go to a urologist. We have to see something. We have to see what's going on. So we went to a urologist, and he ordered a CAT scan, and the CAT scan really just showed nothing was wrong. And so a little while, I went for a semen analysis. I went for a semen analysis, and then it came back as 0. And so then that urologist called me back, and he pretty much dropped me. He said, you need to find a urologist that specializes in male fertility, because that's not me. So I said, oh, do you know anybody? They were like, no. And then they hung up on me.
That's a common problem for so
What?
many.
Jared, I read some of Jared's articles on this, and I was like, Jared, I have to tell you, I read that and I go, nah, that's not really what happened. They didn't not prefer him. Stephanie, what is happening here?
Unfortunately, that does happen all the time. So urology is a pretty broad field. So most urologists as a whole, they tend to subspecialize. So, people ask me, I worked for a very large Boston hospital, and people would say, well, who should I see? And my first question is, well, depends, what's your problem? Because I'm not going to send you to the same person for infertility that I would for kidney problems or for bladder problems or prostate issues. Everybody has their own kind of niche thing that they're doing. So the problem is there aren't enough practitioners that have focused on male fertility.
Okay.
And so it's an ongoing issue where a lot of urologists say, yeah, you have a problem, good luck. If they don't have someone in-house, which not every urology practice has someone that focuses on fertility specifically, and it's really very much a specialized, beyond ordering of a basic semen analysis or maybe some blood work, they'll get you started. Anyone can get you started, including primary care, but next steps can get very complicated very quickly.
No, wow. So Jared,
in the story,
yeah, go ahead now.
No, I was just going to say, to that point, the story Zach and I did for Vice UK, we talked to a few men in the UK who suffer from this, and they and through the NHS, which is the local public health service in the UK, there's nobody specializing in male fertility. So men who have an issue have to go see the gynecologist.
Oh, come on. Wow. Well, Jared, I want to pick up on that, because you did write these, you did write about your own very personal story, very moving. And you were really brutally honest in your story. Tell us why you decided to share your story.
I wanted to see if a part of it, was I just wanted to see if there was anybody else that looked like me that was dealing with it. And and another big reason was when my wife and I were sort of trying to figure out which way to go, we were exploring a sperm donor, and we were looking at like 4 of the major sperm banks in the country, and we saw thousands of white donors, and there were 38 black donors among those major sperm banks. So that sort of was a big reason why I wanted to get into this reporting. And there are definitely a lot more people than you think, not you, but anybody.
Yeah.
There are a lot more people that sort of deal with this than will really come out. They're not willing to share. They don't want to share. Other people don't want them to share. People will spread their business. So, but I just sort of wanted to, if I have to fall on that sword and make that space a little bit better, I'll do that.
You know, infertility and we always talk about this, how lonely people feel. And it really showed in your article. You know, experiencing infertility as a Black man and the impact of the loneliness. I mean, your comment, I think you said something like, I'm sitting here in the waiting room of this doctor's office and I can't relate to anyone in here because they are all white women. And I was like, oh God, my heart just broke for you, because I just thought, wow, what a lonely place to be. Have you thought at all about what we can be doing more? I always talk about it as a community, but what could we be doing more to change that?
I just think it comes down to more guys have to come forward, and so we can sort of get to the root of what's causing these issues. And the more people that come forward, the easier it will be to kind of have that dialogue.
Not enough people talking about it. That's what I say all day, every day. Not enough people. The more that talk, I've taken to some online internet platforms. There's so much misinformation as well. And I spend a lot of my free time on Reddit, giving free advice to men who are challenged with these things. Because there's so much out there where I read and shake my head and go, is that a joke? It all started when a friend shared a Reddit post with me laughing. It was something so preposterous. I'm like, this is all wrong. This is all wrong. And so I am on Reddit using my true name and identifying myself as, what I do for a living, and just giving advice to those that have nowhere to go, that they thought taking to complete strangers who have no experience with this to get advice was the best option that they had.
Well,
it's unfortunate.
In addition to that kind of that loneliness that you felt, there was this lack of support, and just amongst your friends, family, how in general how you felt about the lack of support. Can you talk a little bit about, I don't want to use your words, tell us a little bit about how you felt and maybe still feel about that experience in terms of that emotional support and finding support.
I have to say that mostly everybody's been, everybody's been supportive for the most part, maybe not as supportive about me being as honest as I was in the article, but a lot of people also just really don't know what to say. And that was more triggering for me than anything. People who have kids are like, are you sure you want kids? Things like that. Or, people who tell my wife to, just relax, chill, it'll happen, don't get so worked, things like that. So I think that's been the biggest thing, is like people really not necessarily unsupportive, but people don't know what to say, which really isn't any fault of their own, because there's not a lot of education on this.
Yeah. I say to people, if the general public just had more awareness about reproductive health, how sperm, egg, all of it works, and then had more awareness about infertility, that would then provide those of us going through this with more support, because there would just be, everyone would have a heightened sense of awareness. I have to ask you really quick, Jared, and then I want to ask Nathan the same thing. Curious, have you found yourself explaining the birds and the bees and how it all works
Yes.
to people? Okay. They like, well, wait a minute. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So Nathan, you have been a volunteer for Resolve, which has been fantastic getting to know you. I know when we started this call, before everybody joined, you have a big fan club here amongst the staff at Resolve. So so thank you so much. What you do at Resolve is pretty amazing. We have a virtual support group through Zoom. We do it every month, and it's specifically for male factor focused infertility. And you and another gentleman host that. Can you tell us a little bit about how you first found Resolve?
I actually randomly saw it on the call for volunteers on a Twitter post. I don't know how it ended up in my feed because I don't use Twitter all that often, but I happened to see the call for volunteers, and I said, well, this looks like something I'd like to get into. It. When I was first going through my infertility, I was very quiet about it. To the normal, I think, reaction that a lot of folks go through. I was very quiet and reserved. I didn't talk about it with many people but my immediate family and my closest friends. But similar to what Jared's saying is, if you keep that up, you don't, you can't help anyone else if you stay quiet. So I became more open about my struggles, and I started talking to, telling not just my close friends, but my extended friends and my coworkers. And as I had those conversations, I realized that there was a lot more people that were going through what I went through that I never realized it. So by having those conversations, I then became a resource. So now more people know what I went through, and people, when they hear that another friend's going through it, well, Nate's someone you might want to talk to because he's been through this.
I bet.
People started approaching me, just asking for advice or just asking what to expect. For me, it was fulfilling to sort of help others go through what I had gone through. So when I saw the advertisement, that's when I said, I'm in. I'll volunteer for this.
Oh, wow.
And, we've been doing it for a little over a year now. And sort of to speak on what Jared was just mentioning, and without going into too much detail of what we talk about in the support groups, because it is confidential, but what I'd say is that the themes are the same. The concerns that people bring in, when you think you're alone in your experience, you're not. We're all going through sort of the same thing. And just like me and Jared pretty much have the same story of our first analysis and how it came to be, the folks that are going through this are not alone. There is someone who's gone through pretty much the same experience, and whether that's the actual going through infertility, or if your partner has infertility, a lot of the emotions and the feelings that you go through are similar in many ways. So that's oftentimes what we find in that group, is that there are other people going through what we've been through or what we're going through now.
It's super validating when you hear somebody else say something and you're like, oh my God, I thought I was the only person. It's amazing. Nathan, stay on that theme here, because I know people are going to be listening to this and going, a Zoom male support group. What does that look like? Do you have to give your whole diagnosis? Do you guys have a theme? How do you get started in the conversation? Walk us through what a typical support group looks like.
I'd say everyone is a little bit different. Sometimes there's a lot of folks on the call, and we'll have breakout rooms just to keep the group small. Sometimes there's very few people on the call, and it's more of a conversation. It's always just a conversation. But we sort of take turns talking about what we're concerned with. Sometimes it's, what do I expect, or how do I deal with the emotions that go with it? What about supporting your partner? And we pretty much it's a free conversation, and it's just a venue for people to say what they're feeling, get the poison out. We don't have any rules really for what you can and cannot say, aside from keep it confidential.
Yeah.
But we let the participants really lead the discussion, and me and Matt are there to just sort of facilitate that. And it's a pretty open format that we just let people talk and share their experience or ask their questions, and we answer them to the best of our ability. And sometimes our participants help answer those questions, right? Because we're all going through the same thing. And it's been, for me personally, it's been a rewarding experience to be amongst those these folks that call in month after month. And we have some people that are regulars, and we have some people that join once and never come again.
Okay, I was just going to ask if people can come more than once. Yeah.
Yeah. We have some folks that come every month, or most every month, and we've got some folks that just pop in, ask their questions, they get them answered, and share their story or whatever. It's a very open format that we allow everyone to speak or do, ask what they want.
Jared, would you ever do that? Would you ever call into a Zoom male support group?
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. I mean, I wrote about everything, like most of what I've been going through. So I don't, like, who am I to say that, going into a big group like that? No, not for me. No, I definitely would.
Interesting. All right. Well, Nathan, you're an awesome volunteer. Again, we wouldn't be able to do that kind of thing if people weren't coming forward to do that. So I have got one last question, and then I'm going to let you all share if there's something that you really want to share that we haven't talked about. But this is where, you will hear this a lot about me. I'm sort of an activist. I want to what's the next step? How do we change what the status quo? Because I'm never satisfied with the status quo, especially for people with infertility. So how do we as a community come together to help destigmatize male factor infertility? Jared, I'm gonna have you go first.
Just, if somebody's coming to you, don't be totally closed off. Listen to what they're saying, validate their experience. And, just if you're not sure the right thing to say, don't say it. Or, something you think could be sort of funny is just very triggering, and that makes people not want to talk.
Very good.
Stephanie.
Stephanie.
The same. Yeah, being open is everything. I think the more people that get out there and say, hey, I've got this problem, or, it's going to become more comfortable for others to speak up or maybe address. I just got pulled aside. I'm very vocal about obviously my friends and family know what I do for work. I just got pulled aside at a cookout recently, cornered by a friend of my husband's saying, I got to talk to you. We've been trying for a really long time and we don't know what's going on. What do we do? But this is a whispered conversation in a corner, and as if they were telling me something horrible that nobody else could hear. And this is something that should be able to be spoken about freely. People sometimes will speak up in public crowds. I'm sure you've heard it. I got the gout. I got high blood pressure. People have no problem sharing those things, but no one wants to talk about fertility. So I think the more open people are to speaking about it, especially publicly, I think the more comfortable others will be.
Yeah. Nathan, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree completely. It's being open about the problem is what's going to allow people to know that there is a problem. Like I said, when I got diagnosed, I had no clue that it was even a possibility that I could have this 0 sperm count. I had no clue. But I think having those conversations and being open about it, at least for me personally, opened those doors for me to be able to, for other people to find me as a resource to share a story with, or to ask a question to. Now, that's not to say that it's for everyone to do that, because many people are private about their medical issues. Some people don't like to talk about if they have gout or high blood pressure. It's a personal choice for people, but the more people that are comfortable in speaking about their experience, the more people will know that there's something that they may need to be concerned about, or may not.
Yeah, well, I think there's just a tremendous amount of work that still needs to be done, whether it's from, public health agencies like the CDC and state-based, or whether it's, organizations like Resolve and others where we really, focus on it. There's just so much work in this space that needs to be done. So any last words, anything that you really wanted to make sure you shared that you haven't had a chance to do? So just jump right in if there's anything else.
I'll just echo something Stephanie said. I meant to mention it before, but just get tested. I've been like, see if something isn't right as early as you can. I'm gonna be 35 next month, and I really wish I had sort of gotten this diagnosis when I was in my mid to late 20s. I've been encouraging. I have family my age and younger who aren't ready to have kids yet, so I've been sort of encouraging them to do that so they don't find themselves in my position when they get to be sort of my age and they're looking to start a family.
I find myself saying the same thing to people often. Test early, know what your baseline is, know where you stand, and freeze your sperm. For some people, they're disappointed to see low numbers. I said, but you still have numbers. Preserve what you can. It's an added level of protection if you do have sperm available. You definitely want to have something banked for the future because you just never know.
Nathan, any last words?
No, I'd say that's great advice. Like test early. I think for all I know, I had 0 sperm counts since I was a teenager or forever. And had I tested earlier, at least I wouldn't have been surprised. And maybe that's an answer. You get your standard colonoscopy when you turn 40 or 50 or whenever it is. Maybe there's a point in time when it makes sense to just take a standard analysis.
Yeah. We talk about this kind of, your fertility baseline, and then, your future fertility plans. And even women there, that's not talked about really at all. So, and I know it's not happening with guys either. So, well, gosh, thank you all so much. Stephanie, Jared, Nathan, it's been such a pleasure sitting around our kitchen table with you. Very thoughtful conversation. I feel like we covered a lot and not very much time. To our viewers who are watching, thank you so much. If you are new to Resolve, we invite you to check out our website at resolve.org. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And if this content has been helpful to you, you can also support our mission. We are a nonprofit charitable organization, and you can donate to Resolve at resolve.org. We count on contributions from the community to help us continue to provide free support, and also our advocacy and access to care work that we do all year long. I want to thank Legacy again for your support and sponsorship of this really great and important conversation. So we'll see you soon. And again, thank you, Jared and Nathan and Stephanie.